What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, currently battling through the flu. But, work is work. Got to get your job done. Today is a very interesting story. I was surprised, kind of, that I haven't heard anything, that we hadn't heard anything about the Captain Marvel 2 movie. No director, no writer, no nothing. Now, maybe that's normal. I guess I'm not super familiar with kind of the production schedule of big budget films. But we saw at Comic-Con, Disney and Marvel releasing plenty of information about Phase 4 where Captain Marvel was suspiciously not there. Now, these rumors are also tough to swallow given the movie made $1 billion. This is really weird to me, but there's a couple interesting pieces of information that came from insiders, allegedly, that is being covered. A new rumor claims that Disney has lost confidence in Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, which has to do with the loss of Spider-Man to Sony. Now, why are those two things related? Well, I guess from what I understand, they had planned to use Spider-Man to try and humanize and make Brie Larson's character more likable. Shocking, people don't like her. It's claimed that Disney and Marvel Studios and even Kevin Feige were going to use Spider-Man and Tom Holland to help make Brie Larson and Captain Marvel more likable in the MCU. Now that Spider-Man is gone, Disney is worried about the future of Captain Marvel. Interestingly enough, as seen in Spider-Man Far From Home, Tom Holland is the first to have name-dropped Captain Marvel in the MCU. What's also interesting is that Brie Larson was supposed to be the face of the MCU going forward, and the new leader of the Avengers, and most powerful character in the MCU. However, Kevin Feige didn't announce Captain Marvel 2 as being a part of Phase 4, which is heavily female-oriented, and Feige only hinted at the sequel being announced in the future. Yeah, you would think that, Captain Marvel came out, 2 years ago now? You would think that they'd already be in production. If they haven't already started it, if they haven't already had a director and a writer, you would think they're probably, 2 years away. People are going to wait to 2021 for their next boring Captain Marvel movie. It's interesting. The idea that you would just abandon the character also does not make any sense to me given how much money was made. However, one theory that I have is probably similar to what you all have. When we originally covered Captain Marvel here on the channel, and many other people covered it as well, it was pretty obvious that the box office numbers were buoyed by the fact that it felt like required reading for understanding Endgame, to understanding the completion of the series. That's exactly why Marvel crammed it in right before Endgame. They probably could have put just like some terrible B-style movie in there and had some sort of nugget about Thanos, and everybody would have went to see it. Also, her role in Endgame was minuscule, and other than having a fancy new haircut, she was basically completely forgettable in the movie, which, by the way, is good, but also one wonders if they were doing some sort of audience testing and people didn't like it. Maybe she had a bunch more lines and screen time, but people didn't like her. To be honest with you, the only screen time she got was just the I'm woman, hear me roar scene where all the females, which was like cringeworthy. Even my wife was like, what? And then getting punched by Thanos. Obviously also in the beginning, happening across Tony Stark, but could have been anybody. Captain Marvel 2 currently has no writer, no director, no release date, or start of production announced or even hinted at. It should be pointed out that Marvel is apparently bringing back Robert Downey Jr. to their Phase 4 plans. Tony Stark is coming back for Black Widow prequel, and Robert Downey Jr. is also rumored for the Ironheart Disney Plus series. Obviously, if Brie Larson was the face of MCU going forward, Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers would be a big part of Phase 4. That's what I would think. That's kind of the weird thing about this. She's nowhere now. That just because, I should say, she might be in some of these Phase 4 movies. I don't know. I mean, they haven't said who's appearing in any of them other than, some basic cast notes and generalities about the series. So maybe she'll be in some of those, but certainly not as a feature film. Obviously, if Brie Larson was the new face of the MCU going forward, Captain Marvel Carol Danvers would be a big part of Phase 4. Presently, they are not. Captain Marvel and Brie Larson in big trouble, says rumor. Insiders have filled in Overlord DVD channel. All is not well with Captain Marvel at Disney, and the studio has lost confidence in the character. Quote, Disney is having Brie Larson fatigue. That seems so bizarre. This feels untrue. As funny as it is to report, how could they be having Brie Larson fatigue? She was barely in Endgame, and she was in Captain Marvel, which made $1 billion. Disney's having Brie Larson fatigue. They have lost confidence in her in the direction they're going with Captain Marvel, the YouTuber claims, who stresses that this is considered a rumor at this time. Marvel had plans for Captain Marvel, but those plans were utterly derailed by the loss of Spider-Man to Sony. The YouTuber goes on to state that the Marvel went on to realize that Captain Marvel was a little stiff and a bit unlikable. Well, duh. So Marvel was counting on pairing her up with Spider-Man in order to humanize her and balance her out a bit. Why not put her on Guardians of the Galaxy then? That's a little more lighthearted, right? The YouTuber then goes on to say that the reason for Sony may not have wanted Spider-Man to continue in the MCU is because Kevin Feige's politically correct route he's taking in Phase 4. I find that hard to believe. Sony plays along with that, which is, among other things, sees Feige race bend and gender swap classic Marvel characters, which happened in the Captain Marvel movie to an extent. No way. Sony doesn't care about that. I don't know. It seems Sony doesn't care. The YouTuber claims that Spider-Man was going to be used as a second banana to Captain Marvel, meaning she would have belittled Spidey in order to prop herself up. Spidey would have been the butt of jokes and would have brought much-needed humor to Carol Danvers, but also Captain Marvel would have humiliated Spider-Man in order to promote Disney's PC feminist agenda, which shows females as being better than males. I don't know. These are some pretty specific claims. I don't know that Sony is anti-PC. I've seen no direction of that. I mean, they're just as woke as anybody else. Regarding Sony, the YouTuber claims that, quote, unfortunately for Marvel, Sony has other plans for Spider-Man, plans that don't involve Spidey being second best, and us. Oh, come on. Okay. No way. And being a wife's boyfriend to Brie Larson. The YouTuber goes on to question if Captain Marvel was a, quote, smash hit that Disney claimed it was. Why would no sequel be announced at San Diego Comic-Con or D3 Expo? That I agree with. That's very bizarre. And given how long it takes to cycle these things out and how long, I don't know why you wouldn't have announced Captain Marvel 2 at D23 or at Comic-Con. And if it's in fact true that there's no writer and really no production plans, they're probably 3 or 4 years out. As noted by the YouTuber, Disney's releasing Black Widow prequel movie and Thor: Love and Thunder, which looks awful, by the way, starring Natalie Portman as female Thor, before they even touch Captain Marvel again. Captain Marvel wasn't all she was cracked up to be, said the YouTuber. Well, she made $1 billion. I don't know. Wow, these are some bold statements. Now, there may be, there's definitely some... Look, I don't know. I don't know who this person's source is. Maybe it's true. But it seems odd that a movie that made $1 billion... Now, maybe they really know that, hey, maybe some insane amount of, like, let's say 60 or 70%. They're just making it up. Let's say Disney knew that more than half of the people that saw Captain Marvel didn't really like it and also just were going to get caught up on the MCU before Endgame. Okay, so they take that number and they say, okay, well, maybe Captain Marvel 2 is going to flop. Maybe they're looking at that. That's a scenario, I think, that could lead to all of this being true. I don't see Sony saying that they don't want Spider-Man to be a soy-infused man. I don't see Sony saying that kind of stuff. But who knows? Spider-Man, I mean, there are plenty of other ways to lighten up Captain Marvel, including putting her with the Guardians of the Galaxy or some of the other lighthearted characters in the MCU. Again, it's noted Spider-Man being Captain Marvel's lapdog wouldn't be a good thing With it said, Disney is losing confidence in Captain Marvel, maybe slowly starting to realize that alienating your fan base isn't the best way to run a business. Admittedly, the YouTuber is kind of wonky. The YouTube video is kind of wonky as it puts parodic spin on things. But I actually brought this up. A similar argument in my article on Spider-Man going to Sony might be a good thing. An article that the LA Times also brought up is one of the reasons Sony decided to pull Spider-Man out of the MCU, because concerns surrounding how Spider-Man would fit in Marvel's Phase 4 plans, which definitely fits with the above rumor. Huh, okay. We also see that Sony, unlike Marvel and Kevin Feige, look to be sticking with the classic versions of characters for their own Spider-Man universe, as Sony decides to resemble their actual comic book counterparts. While Disney and Feige race bend and gender swap classic beloved Marvel comic book characters, not for the sake of story, but for the sake of politically correct driven agenda. Well, I think that's true in the comic books, right? In the movies themselves, not really, at least not yet. Also, I mean, I suppose you could say the female Thor, but there is lore for that. There is canon for that. Also, regarding the mention of Disney not liking that fact that Marvel and Feige are alienating a fan base, exactly what happened with Disney Star Wars movies, particularly with Ryan Roundhead Johnson's Star Wars The Last Jedi, as the Star Wars franchise is currently in disaster mode. Again, I'm not sure it's in disaster mode, but certainly they probably could have made somewhere between 25 and 30% more money if they didn't, try to alienate their fan base. This is an interesting topic to discuss because, there's all sorts of other stories out there about, Disney buying seats. Lots of people saying that theaters were sold out, but then when they went to go in that opening night, there was hardly anyone there. Hey, who knows? I mean, certainly buying tickets ahead of a film release to make the opening box office look big is something that the film industry, of course, does. Maybe they had to go a larger extent for Captain Marvel. Maybe they've started to survey fans and realize that, wow, people just really saw Captain Marvel because they wanted to know what was going on in Endgame, and now people are just not interested in the character anymore. Certainly some people just I'm sure there are plenty of fans of Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, Carol Danvers, especially in the if you have a blue checkmark on Twitter. So they absolutely still have their kind of cheerleader group. But it is curious. I mean, there's other articles that pick this up. And we got this covered, which is kind of a crummy site too. But, they picked it up. There must be some credibility here. The fact that they haven't started anything is curious. We'll have to wait and see. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Above, you'll find some links to watch more videos, as well as a nice big button to subscribe, which I hope you'll do. If you did enjoy it, make sure before you go that you leave a like and a comment on the video, because you are the #1 reason this channel continues to grow, and I appreciate you.